Well, hi. Thank you for checking in here on the BDR lunch gathering videos. We're glad you're here. We want to let you know that we have quite a few of these videos. In fact, if you go to the BDR site and check out our page, you'll find that here under news and lunch gathering, you'll find not only the fact that these educational web seminars are free, there is no cost whatsoever, but you'll find out what's coming up and a complete listing of all the different ones we've had in the recent past and over the past 2 years and a half. All these are good sources of information that I think you'll enjoy. So we invite you to check in, visit with us, and let us know how you appreciate them. There is a little button in the bottom here. It says subscribe. If you click on that to the little bell, you'll get a weekly reminder when new posts are made. And we, again, thank you for being part of our family. And I think we're going to have a good, enjoyable chat with Gordon Carter. And later on, Tim Posar is going to drop in with some information. Gordon, here's the question that we need to ask here. What happens if that what? Gordon, talk to us.
Well, it could be almost anything. And I'm going to bring up my screen sharing here for a moment. And hopefully this will all work. Yeah, I think it's working.
Yes, sir.
I hope it's working. Yeah, well, you could watch out for just about anything, and that was why we kind of left it the way it is. It could be, well, it could be like, okay, come on, advance, will you? Technology never works the way you want it to. Okay, there, let's see if that works.
There you go.
Yeah, see if you're like this guy. Now, you may think this is unusual. I can tell you from personal experience, never a day goes by that I'm in downtown Chicago. I don't see some idiot like this with his face more in his phone than he is in the traffic. And I know on more than one occasion I've been on a bus that's had to slam on the brakes when someone walks out in front of them. And if you're riding on the bus, that's not a very pleasant experience. But wanted to use this as a kickoff because we're really concerned today. And yeah, I'm going to give you a little clue to start with. This is not going to be necessarily the most pleasant thing to think about. And I'm sorry, we'll try to lighten it up with some train talk or something later on. But yeah, it's some heavy stuff, but we do need to think about it once in a while.
All right, I'm gonna just
yeah.
Forgive me, Gordon, but I'm gonna do exactly what you're talking about and give it a little bit of levity here. Okay.
Okay, great.
This is the one.
Oh, this is the one yeah.
Walks right into the fountain. And it happens
stays on the phone.
And it happens a lot. Back to you, Gordon.
Okay. Yeah, you got me back on. Thank you. Let's think for just a couple of seconds what may take you out of the picture. And we'll talk in general terms when I say out of the picture. Basically unable to function. It could be something really stupid, an illness. And some of us have battled COVID, and There, of course, there's always the flu or whatnot. Sometimes there's things that are a little, shall we say, a little more serious, take you out for longer periods of time. Surgery, I've had a few of those. An out-of-town emergency. Could be almost anything. We all have families somewhere, and in this day and age, families are often, not usually, but often out of town, and something comes up. You need to pay attention to that. Sometimes you need to care for others. I know a couple that I work with.
Go ahead and grab the screen again.
What?
Go ahead and grab the screen again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me, okay, let me see if I can find the, okay, and yeah. Okay.
You're back
Sorry.
up. Yep.
Sorry about that. I was looking at I've got 3 screens here and I'm confusing myself. But yeah, couple that they were doing fine right here in Chicago, and all of a sudden the mother-in-law got needed home care, and she was in Texas. Well, they packed up in a matter less than 2 weeks' time, packed up, moved to Texas. He's able to, well, they're both able to work remotely, but he actually does an on-air shift every afternoon, and from Texas, doing Chicago weather and traffic, among other things. So modern technology is useful, but this is the sort of thing that can come up as to things that you may need to do. And okay. Sometimes there's an accident. Who knows? You could be that poor guy that got in front of the truck, or in some cases even death. And like I said, this is a little heavy, but it happens. And I'm sure we all know people that were doing fine, and next day they're gone. And we need to be prepared for this. A wise person is prepared, and this, I don't know what happened there, but you need to be spiritually prepared. I'm not going to say much about that, but if you have questions, talk to your clergyman. Notify those that are directly affected by your situation. You need to know how to have a way that they will be contacted. Other people that are just friends, maybe, you need to provide for those that are not directly affected and who are affected. And then you just have loose ends that you need to tie up. Ways to do this. An in case of emergency number in your phone. Most phones these days have a way that emergency responders can actually find your emergency contacts without knowing your password and being able to break into your phone. Very helpful. Make sure that's there. It's not automatically filled out. Make up a notification list. Who should be notified and how to notify them. Email, phone numbers, who knows what. Make sure you have people that are designated to do certain tasks in case you're not available. This covers a lot of different areas. We'll talk about that a little bit in a bit. You need people that will notify others, take care of your bills. You need an account access list. If someone's going to be taking care of your finances, they need to know how. And especially in this day of e-commerce, you need to get all of this stuff available so that someone can access it. And please don't make a list on your computer and leave it there. What if they can't get into your computer? Make sure your emergency documents are readily available. Yes, they need to be secure, but they need to be available. And this is all your own. And by the way, before I dig a big hole on a lot of this stuff, please consult professionals. I'm not a professional I'm not a lawyer or financial planner or anything else, but there are people that are out there that can do this, and get a hold of them. Use their advice. They may cost a little bit, but believe me, they're worth it. Most nowadays, if you walk into a hospital, first thing they're going to ask you is if you have advanced healthcare directives. What's going to happen to you if you can't speak for yourself? Power of attorney. That's important. Have a will available. These documents and others. Every state's a little different. A good attorney that deals with this stuff on a regular basis will be again, well worth the money. And make sure it's someone you can trust. Don't find the first shyster that advertises on TV, please. But there are good attorneys out there. I happen to have one that I deal with. He's third generation attorneys, and he's in the business to help people. And that's what he does. And he does a really good job of it. Make sure your beneficiaries are up to date on your insurance, your everything that you have that has a beneficiary. Make sure that that's up to date. We all have personal property of some sort that's not in our will. Maybe they're small things, but valuable. Deal with that ahead of time in some way. Either give it away. I know some people, as they get older, give stuff to their kids that they don't want, or they make up a list that kind of goes along with their will. A lot of that depends on your family situation. Now, in terms of dealing with your business affairs, make sure that your supervisor is notified if in some reason you're out of it. And your supervisor really is important on a lot of this stuff, because he is the one, he or she, I have to say he or she these days, that's going to have to do something to fill in for you. This one, it's amazing how many people forget to have a password list for all of those pieces of equipment that we have in the station that have a password. And think about it a minute. You may have everything working very smoothly. And it all has a password. Sooner or later, someone's going to need to change something or whatnot. If they don't have your passwords or the necessary passwords to get into this equipment, they have two choices: replace it and start over, or do a factory reset and start over. Both of which means that something's not going to be usable for a while, and it could be serious downtime. Password list, man, just really helpful. Again, you may not want everybody in the station to have a password list, but make sure that your supervisor has it, or a trusted associate. Password lists are very important, especially important if you're the only technician there. Sometimes if you're the only one, the general manager has to have that list or something. Make sure your documentation is up to date. Again, I've seen total facilities ripped out because not because there was something wrong with it, but because nobody understood how it worked. And documentation of all sorts is, everything from a block diagram, IP lists, you name it, make sure it's documented. Notification list for professional contacts. Who do you call if? Every piece of equipment probably has a support line. You need to have those people available. This may be a piece of equipment, the person that replaces you may not know all of the manufacturers that you know. This is where that comes in handy. Contact information for warranties, software subscriptions, all kinds of stuff. A lot of this stuff you need to know not only who to contact, but when do the warranties and these things run out. Nothing's more embarrassing than to have a piece of software that all of a sudden stops working because you forgot to renew the subscription to it. And of course, it's really embarrassing if that happens to be a very key piece of software in your station. If you own your own business, there's a few more things that come into play. What's going to happen to your business assets when you die? Do they go to your family? Do they go to your partner if you have one? Or does it just disintegrate? Your business licenses, permits, whatever, you've got to deal with those in one form or another. Transfer them. If the ownership of your business changes, then that has to change somewhere. If it's again, there's all kinds of things. A good lawyer will tell you everything you need to know. Notify your clients. Nothing's more embarrassing to me than, or would be more embarrassing than to pick up the phone and try to call a business that I've been working with for years and get a BDD. I'm sorry, that number is not in service anymore. And no forwarding numbers. Where do you do? Let your clients know what to do. Cancel advertising subscriptions. Again, if your business is ending, you don't want calls and stuff to come forever. anyway, that's pretty much it. It's just a shopping list. And I'm going to ask before we open it up, there's one more thing I'd like to do. And this is kind of a favor. I'd like all of you to do me a little favor, not now, but Saturday, this coming Saturday. I'd like you to send an email to my wife. And her email address is scarter@gcarter.us. And just to wish her a happy birthday. She did this to her brother a couple of years ago. And it's amazing how many people will send an email, and to get an email coming from who knows who it says happy birthday, it's a little unusual, but I'd like you all to do that. So that's about it.
Could you give the email address again, please?
Sure. It's my email is right there on the screen, and just change the Gordon to S. Carter. That's SCARTER.
Yeah, could we have her name, please?
Sharon or Sam. She goes. That's an interesting story how she got the nickname of Sam. But she actually goes by Sam or Sharon.
Okay, well, let's have some further thoughts here, and I'll ask you the first question here, Gordon.
Okay.
You mentioned all this documentation, both from a personal level and from a professional level. You did mention bringing material to the GM. Where do you put your personal materials?
Well,
not a safe deposit box.
Well, actually, to a point you can. What we did, we know that our daughter is going to be our executrix of our will. And what we did was actually get her signed onto the account for the safe deposit box. She knows where the key is, and so she can get into the safe deposit box. No problems.
Okay. So therefore, all your passwords, all your contacts, all that information is in the safe deposit box, but your daughter knows to go look for it.
Yeah, she knows where to look for it. And as far as account information and passwords, all of that stuff, not a copy of the will, the original is in the safe deposit box, but a copy of our will is kept in a safe spot in our house, again, that she and select people know about. We have a hidey hole in our house. I won't tell you where it is, but
no, we'll be
it's
right
well hidden. But
it's like one of those find it games that radio stations used to play. What was it? It was St. Louis, where they dug up lawns all over the city. Station license.
Yeah.
Anyway, but you're right.
The
GM should have it for the station, and somebody trusted, either a family member that is likely to still be alive should you have a problem, or should it be someone that you can trust.
Or if you have no one in the family, some lawyers will do that. Where they will keep it at their offices.
But that assumes that people know to call the lawyer.
Exactly.
So one of the questions that was put in here was Bill Galhouse mentions that in Pennsylvania, if the box comes with your daughter's name. If she has a problem, or your wife, the bank will freeze the box until the state comes in.
I don't quite understand what the,
In other words, the joint tenancy on a safe deposit box in Pennsylvania, if one tenant, if you have your wife, you, your daughter, whatever, and one of those dies, the box is frozen until the state comes in.
Same in New York.
So sometimes you need to get some of this stuff in a place that's not in the safe deposit box.
okay, again, like I said, every state is different. In Illinois, we asked our attorney and the bank both, and they said, sure, no problem. And so that's what we did. In Illinois, as long as their name is on the account and they have a key in their hand.
Mm-hmm. Good thinking. Now, Greg mentions that they use LastPass to store users, passwords, IP addresses, and other information. And Tim mentions 1Password or LastPass. These are good points, but again, somebody that knows you and would respond to your incapacitation or passing needs to be close. And again, I'm just laying this out as a potential problem. A lawyer may not know of the situation, and somebody that is close to you may not know which lawyer to call. So it's a matter of, well, maybe put a sign on the wall like the chief operator list. In case of trouble, call this guy.
Yeah. Again, every situation is different. And I found that the hardest part was just figuring out all the contingencies.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's take that apart just a little bit here. And so we'll start backwards, as it were. Let's start with station documentation, trouble sheets, wiring diagrams, all the information. And you made a very good point. For every piece of equipment and manufacturer, there should be some contact information and the serial number and the date the item was installed. Tim, maybe this is a good time to invite you in to add to our discussion here. You have a discussion, some points, and a thought about NetBox, right?
Well, there's hopefully you can hear me. You
Yes.
can?
There you
Okay,
go.
good. So there's station documentation is real critical, particularly if you're trying to figure out what an end of a wire does, or why this AES signal is disappearing, or just what goes in and what goes out. And we can talk about that in a second. I think that the big thing, the top level thing, is that any documentation you have is going to be a living document. You don't want to just document everything, put it in a binder, and then not see it for the next 10 years, because it's going to be wildly out of date even 24 hours later. So whatever you do should be something that you plus a bunch of other people can maintain and update. So if you're changing a wire, that means, or putting some new equipment in or something else like that, you shouldn't be necessarily the bottleneck in putting this on a piece of paper and putting it on a binder. It should be something where it's either in a Word document or a wiki or a spreadsheet or something else like that. There's specific programs out there that do things like wire documentation. We've probably heard of WireCAD in the past as such. Most of these are rather are well done. They can be a little expensive. People are starting to take what's called DCIM, or data center infrastructure management documentation methods, and move those into radio stations. And one thing that Barry just mentioned was NetBox. NetBox is a DCIM. It was originally done for, again, data centers. So it has a data center bent to it. In other words, it knows about network connections and things like that. But recently there's been some expansion where you can add these plugins to say, okay, well, I want to define not just an Ethernet jack, I want to define an XLR, I want to define a BNC, I want to define an SMA. And I also want to be able to define that this is going to be a piece of coax that's going to go between point A and point B. That's going to be RG59, 58, RG8, whatever else. So that has, Netbox has opened up some plugins, and I can show this to you and see if you don't mind me sharing the screen. Hold on here. There we go. You should see a screen here showing up soon.
There you are.
Okay, great. This and this is actually KPFA's implementation of Netbox. I promoted this to them some time back as a way of documenting not only their network, but documenting all the audio and visual connections that they have as well. And so at the very least, we can do things like what we do is we define a site, and a site will be something like, in this case, Hurricane Electric, where they have a data center, the KPFA studios, the KPFA transmitter site. We even are documenting stuff for KPFK here and things like that. There's a, in that that's a subset of things like regions. So we know, for instance, in Monterey, there's actually a translator down there, so we call it a site, which is the call letters of the site. And then we can associate different devices and connections with each of the sites and such. So in the case of, for instance, I want to show you racks. A good example of a rack would be a rack elevation. Let me see. I want to do this one here. Here, I don't know. Can folks see that, or is that is that too tiny for folks?
Yes, it's there.
Okay. This is an example of defining what's in a rack and being able to actually have some sort of visual rack elevation that you can have associated with it to be able to say, so you have documentation. So you could say to somebody, you know, go into the room and it's like the second box from the top, and this is what it looks like on the front. And on the back, you know, so you can see there's a front and a rear on this. And what we've done is we've basically just gone to like BSW or wherever else and be able to take pictures of the front, or you go to the manuals and you slice out pictures of the front of it, and you slice out a picture of the back of it. And so for every device type, like in this case, this looks like an Innovonics mod monitor or something like that, we can define what the front of it is. Let's see. I have to go into the device types and such. Device roles. Anyway, so I can associate. So I say, I may have a device type that's manufactured by Innovonics, like this mod monitor, and I may have multiple versions of that. So that every time I deploy one for, you know, like for one radio station, another one for a radio station, it will just clone. It will know that it has these connections on it, and this is what it looks like in the front, and this is what the power requirements are, and things like that. So it'll inherit that, and then so now I can say I have a specific mod monitor that's going to be in this rack, and it's going to be used for receiving, say, KPFA's off air, and this is their dedicated, you know, off air and modulation monitor that they're using. And then from that, you'll see in the back of this that, it's not showing the back very well, but if I zoom in, there's a bunch of pictures of the connections and such, or the connectors in the back of it. But you'll also see on this device that there's a, let me go to this device in particular, there's going to be interfaces. So interfaces can be things like GPIO pins, or they can be things like BNC connectors, or XLRs, or whatever else you want. And then these are going to be connected. You're going to have another concept, which you'll have cables, where you're going to have a cable that goes from this GPIO pin to some other, maybe an off-air light or something, or an on-air light or something like that, that you're going to have this GPIO pin driving. So this is the kind of stuff that you really need to know. And it also helps you be able to do things like planning and provisioning. How much rack space, how much resource do you have? Do you have enough power in the rack to do this? Do you have enough rack space? Do you, did that GPIO pin actually get connected? Or is that a planned or staged action that you need to do? So this is the latest version of NetBox. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details on this unless you have questions about it, and I could show you how to do this, because this can take. I did this dog and pony for another radio station, and it took about 3 hours to sort of drill through all of NetBox.
Is this a paid program? Is this
It's free. It's open source.
Okay.
Yeah. You just need a Linux box and load it up on that. The back end is Postgres as a database. It's relatively simple to install if you have some confidence in doing, Linux implementations and systeminning and things like that. There's a pretty easy step-by-step to go into this. If you go to, I think it's netbox.io. Oops, can't take that phone call right now. I think it's netbox.io. Let me check here. Oop, no. Federal billing investigation. Okay, NetBox. Here's the source that you can download, but it also has documentation on how to install it.
You sent me the GitHub the other day.
Yeah, that's what this one is here. And then there's companies that will support you if you don't feel comfortable about doing this yourself. There's companies like company called Network to Code that will do the support for this kind of thing as well. Here's an example of a circuit with cable. So you can see that in this case, again, it's a data center sort of thing. So there's a Cisco router there. This is the Ethernet connection it's connected to. There's cable number 1. So that's it's a fiber connection that goes to a circuit, basically, that you're going to be getting from level 3 or something else like that, and then eventually goes to level 3's MPLS circuit and network or something like that. But this is a much more complicated, as opposed to you can have this basically just do, again, end-to-end wiring that you may have within a plant and such.
This looks like it's running on the local computer as opposed to a web application. Is that true?
This would run on a server, so you'd run this on a Linux box at your place. You could either run it there, or in my case, I spin up AWS instances and put that up there, and then maybe ACL it so that it's only available from the IP address of the studio. So not everybody else in the world can see this kind of stuff, or at least bang up against it.
Okay, it's not you can't access it with a web browser though.
Oh, you can, yeah. So this. Let's see. Let me go back to the. This is a. Oh, hold on here. EPFA. This is a browser pointed towards a VM, a virtual machine that KPFA is hosting, and so this is basically just the a browser looking at that web interface to NetBox.
That's great, because that way other people can have access to it and so on.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. If someone wanted to, shall we say, just play around with it just to get their feet wet before doing a full-blown installation, is there some way to do that?
They do have demo places that you can go to. I'd have to dig it up and point you to it, but there's a demo online that you can go to, and you can sort of add and and see how it works and such.
Oh, so you can actually work with the demo?
Mhm.
It's an interactive demo?
Yeah, it's a live thing, and what they do is they just kind of zero it out once a day, and then you can go in there and play with it and such.
Okay, thank you.
Has anyone successfully done a server on a Raspberry Pi?
A netbox?
Yeah.
You can. It doesn't take that much of CPU if you want to just sort of like deploy it on a Raspberry Pi just to try it out. You can do that. It requires kind of like an Ubuntu or Debian Linux distribution, and the Raspbian, or you can put Ubuntu on a Raspberry Pi, and you can do it that way. It doesn't take a lot of memory. It's just basically a Postgres database and a bunch of PHP in front of it that it works. So I have this running on VMs that just have like one core assigned to it, and I think a half a gig or a gig of memory on them or something like that. So there's anyway, so I just wanted to say that this is a pretty handy little thing about documenting a plant. I've been working with other companies, other stations, and we're starting to explore this a bit more. KPFA has taken it probably further than I've taken it in the past, because the guy who took over the chief engineer job at KPFA has a serious IT background, so he really just sort of jumped on this like duck on water. So that's Brian and David here, and hopefully, actually, Barry and I have been talking about maybe we could try to get Brian to sort of demo this a little bit more and about how he's running KPFA. He's pretty much remote at this point. I don't even think he lives in the East Bay anymore. And he's running pretty much most of KPFA remotely, using tools like this, as well as the ideas that came across early in the discussion here about how do you do things like documenting policies about the station. How do you document passwords? How do you how do you get monitoring and alerting? So he's using a thing called Slack. I don't know can you see that? You may not see that. You may not be sharing it right. Let me stop sharing and I can show you. Let me get you Slack for a second here. So he's using, they're using a thing called Slack. And they have an alerts channel. So they have pretty much everything that may go wrong, like the audio device that feeds KFCF, because KPFA feeds KFCF a live feed. They can show the status of it being up and down. They can see if earlier on they were showing things like EAS tests coming in. Here's a stream loss that went down. I may be showing more than what they really want me to show here, but I don't know if that's the case. Here's the EAS test alert. So this is a really sort of nice place to be able to go in. Okay, so this is a Sage box that's sending this alert and then putting in the alerts channel. So in real time, you're seeing what's happening at the station. And then the nice thing also too is that they have an engineering channel, which I can only show you for a second, where they can converse back and forth. Particularly, this is helpful, because David is not on site. Or Brian is not on site, he can, alert the people who are actually on site, hey, move the cable from this point to this point, or hey, the phone system went down again, or something else like this. So this collaborative communications in real time. Email doesn't make it. People don't check their email in real time. People will check things like Slack or Discord or other communication systems like that in real time, and that will be more push to you. So you may say, I'm going to run Slack on my phone. I want it to buzz every time I see an alert like this, or my name get mentioned, or something like that.
Is this open source again?
This is, no, Slack is something you pay for. This is a service as a solution. Discord is also something you could do something like that, but that's usually free. But it's, again, it's a hosted system. There are things like Zulip, which is a hosted system. I use Zulip for ARDC, and that can be hosted. So you could host this on your own cloud or your own server that you have at your location, and it's much like Slack in that regard.
Okay.
There is a free version of Slack as well, but it's not as capable.
Well, you can use it for, yeah, you can use a free version of it. But after, what happens is if you put postings or messages up after about 90 days or 180 days or something like that, it'll start deleting those messages. And particularly if you start putting up a lot of images and things like that, they'll start cutting you back. You really have to subscribe to it if you really want to keep that history in there.
All right. Another.
Anyways, that's kind of my dog and pony. And considering that you may want to look at, there's other documentation systems that you can be looking at for much, such as Netbox for wiring a a radio station.
Appreciate that.
I
We had the Wirecard guy on last year, and it's in the video list on the BDR. Wirecard, though, is a paid program, of course, but there are many different ways. Some people use Excel. Some people want something more detailed, and then there's just using a wiki or a doc file.
Yeah, Excel's fine to some degree, but that just means that there's an Excel file that needs to be managed, and that usually ends up being on somebody's computer. And if somebody else needs to update it, that makes it more difficult. What we've done for I've done for some of the companies, or they've done for me, is we'll put that Excel file into a Dropbox folder someplace, and then we can't open it at the same time, but we can go in there and both edit it, at different times.
If you have a question or a comment, we invite you to press your space bar or alternate A. One of the things I will mention for some of you new ones, if you would like to have a reminder, on Tuesday, we send out a reminder to everybody what is our topic for the week and the link. And if you would like to have that, please do send me a private message and I will take care of that. Any other questions for Gordon or for Tim, or comments on what you found to be a good way of doing documentation?
Barry, one thing that I've done is for every client, I also have help files. And because if there's a similar problem that crops up all the time, it's a written instruction on how to deal with it. Now, for my full-time job, I have it sitting in a directory at the office, so and everybody knows they can access it via Teams or whatever. And for my clients, my wife knows how to handle it if something has happened to me, because obviously the client has to be paid up to have access to it. And that's one thing someone has to think about. Also, if you're doing a lot of contract engineering, how much are you going to give to clients that aren't paid up? Because I have found that when I was in the hospital many years ago, one client said to me, "Oh, I'm not paying you until I see if you survive." And that was not going to happen. So I dropped that client.
I know some folks have gone to the point, transmitters especially, of taking the schematic on a transmitter, blowing it up, putting it on the wall at the transmitter building. And that's where you can make notes and circle trouble points and leave information for the next guy what to do if he gets to that particular part of the transmitter.
It's also important to have copies of that because I went to work on one transmitter that was in a rather remote situation, and the guy had the schematic up on the wall, and it was all faded. Thank God the person that was retiring had a copy of it because it was totally unusable.
I put all my documentation for manuals and stuff on Google Drive, and then I can access it from just about anywhere without having to eat up space on my hard drive on the laptop.
Google Drive's down to 2 gigabytes now, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Dropbox has cut everybody back. Used to be 8, and you could log in from almost anywhere. Now it'll only sync with 2 or 3 locations, unless you pay more.
What I did for years is, and if you've got the patience and the ability and the time, I guess, I used Windows Paintbrush to do a lot of my documentation, diagrams and stuff. I would just draw out the diagrams and for everything,
Mm-hmm.
and that worked out real well.
One problem with using software, and I've run into this, and if you use, say you use Visio or Paintbrush or whatever, is what happens if the person trying to view it doesn't have that software? Always have something like a PDF or something available.
I would save it as a JPEG.
JPEG,
Pretty
PDF,
much everybody can read a
something that's
JPEG.
universal.
Yep. Right, exactly.
I agree, Gordon. Everything I do, I always upload to a PDF.
Yeah. Don't, and your comment about having backups, we had a transmitter once, was an RCA transmitter that they were very nice. They gave you very nice big schematics. And the copy that they provided for us had a big ink blob right in one spot, and you couldn't read a thing there. Fortunately, we had another copy that was fine, but that does happen, or did happen. That doesn't happen quite so much nowadays with computers and computer printers.
Has anybody with us this afternoon run into a situation where you have been called in to a site and there's no documentation? You ever have that happen to you?
Too often.
I think
Once is too often.
That's for sure. And so it's, as talking about the points that Gordon made earlier, as well as Tim's points, this is our call to action to do something. It doesn't have to be fine combed down to the last little dot, but we should certainly have policies and procedures clear for anyone that comes in, so they don't go sticking their hand somewhere and getting shocked out of their lives. David, that's a good point. And it really goes back to the very first slide that Gordon showed us. Have you ever followed a death at a site? Manager says, I'm sorry, you can't talk to George. He's not around anymore. How do you feel about that? Or I guess worse, finding a corpse on the site. and having to step over the corpse to get back on the air. I think that's about as grisly as it could get.
I've had corpse at transmitter site, not people in the transmitter site, but like homeless on the way just outside the transmitter site.
It's also very bad to follow someone when the general manager says, "Oh no, you can't speak to that person. We're not on speaking terms."
Had one other at a studio deal. The engineer was sick a long time and was going downhill. Every day he'd go in and try to finish a control room. That was he wanted that studio finished before he died. And it might have been better if he didn't, because once it was in and running, there were a lot of, miswirings and mislabelings. And he would get there, he'd work an hour or two and just be too tired to continue, and would go home, and it might be a few days or a week before he got back. It was sad to see someone go like that. But like I said, you hear stories about the big transmitter where, particularly when they were manned, where someone at the studio turned up something and the lockouts were not locked out and someone at the transmitter was killed. I've never had anything like that.